I've been reading the Bible. So I read in the Bible that some things are a mystery. What's a mystery? Oh, it's when we're told part of the story, but we have to wait a while to hear the whole story. In a mystery, we get clues. A mystery makes us think and hope and imagine. And then when we hear the whole story, sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it's surprising. Ooh. Sometimes it's exciting. Ooh. Sometimes it's comforting. Oh. Sometimes we say, oh, I should have guessed that. And sometimes we say, oh, I would never have guessed that. Mystery. Lots of times there are mysteries in the Old Testament in the Bible. And lots of times the whole story is revealed in the New Testament of the Bible. In a book in the Bible that I'm looking at right now, it's called Isaiah. That's in the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3, it says, a voice crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Oh, that's a clue. Sometimes when people hear a clue, they do this. Why don't you do it with me? Stroke your chin. It's called stroking. Your finger, your thumb, stroke your chin. And while you're doing that, you can frown a little bit, a little look of concentration on your face, and you say, oh, that's interesting. We say that because we don't know what the clue means. Good job. Good job of being, not knowing, but thinking about it. That's interesting. Well, hundreds of years after this in the Isaiah, there was an angel who came to earth, and he appeared to a man whose name was Zechariah. And the angel said, Zechariah, you and your wife will have a baby. You are to name him John. And John will be important in the Lord's eyes. Oh, that's a clue too. We don't know why John will be important in the Lord's eyes, why the Lord will look at John and say, that's important. Let's see what else it says here. Well, it tells us that the baby was born, and they named him John. And John, are you ready, was interesting. Why don't you do your chin thing again, because John was an interesting person. John lived out in the wilderness, and I think he was kind of wild, like the wilderness that he lived out in. We don't hear too much about what he was doing while he was out there, but let's try to guess. Let's try to imagine. Okay. Well, he probably slept on the ground. I mean, it was the wilderness. He didn't have his bed. And I don't know. Maybe he gathered together some leaves and some grass and things to pile on top of him so he wouldn't be cold when he was sleeping on the ground. And maybe while he was sleeping on the ground, stuff got stuck in his hair. And maybe his hair grew real long. Maybe it was kind of wild, and sticks and leaves in it. And maybe sometimes if he had something in his teeth, he would pull out one of those sticks from his hair and use it as a toothbrush. Like, I don't know, but he was interesting. We know that. We know that because the Bible tells us what he wore. He wore like a coat, cloak, clothes kind of thing made out of camel hair. So how did he do that? Well, I think he was walking along, and there had been camels living out in the wilderness. That's where I think they live. And he saw a camel had died, and there was his skin there on the ground and the hair, and John probably thought, well, I'm kind of needing some clothes. I think I think I'll use that for my clothes. So he'd pick it up and he'd shake it out a little bit and he'd put it on and kind of draped it around himself, and it was kind of saggy and baggy, but it was warm and it was probably scratchy and itchy, but still it was clothes for him. And he thought, well, it's okay if it wasn't so scratchy, but I need something to pull it in so it's not flopping around. And well, then he saw a piece of leather on the ground. The leather, maybe it was like a snake skin, or maybe it was skin that was from another animal that had died, and the rain and the sun and the wind and everything had dried it out so that it became leather. So he wrapped that around and he tied that. The Bible tells us he wore clothes of camel hair and a leather belt. Okay, but this, okay, are you ready for this? It tells us what he ate. He ate locusts. Locusts are grasshoppers. So he would gather up the locusts somewhere, they were hopping around, he'd grab them, and then he went over to find where there was a bee's nest, and there was honey in the honeycomb in the bee's nest, and he would take the locust and dip it in the honey and then eat it. Okay, that's what we know about him. That's why I know that he was a little bit wild, like the wilderness, and people started coming out to see John. I mean, he was probably something to see, the hair and everything like that. And then they started to hear John because he started talking to them. John started telling people about God's plan to send the saving man, his son, to earth to save us all from our sins. So people would listen and they'd look at him, they'd go back to their town, and they'd probably tell their neighbors, hey, you gotta come and look at this guy out here. You gotta hear what he has to say. And so the neighbors would go and they'd all listen. Well, what happened was the people that were listening, lots of them decided, oh, I hear what he's saying about God, about who he's sending, about our lives. I've been walking this way, living this way. After my selfishness, after doing what I want to do, sinning, doing things I shouldn't be doing, I've been going this way. I'm going to turn around. In my life, I'm going to start going this way. I'm going to start going God's way. And John said, that's repenting. When you change and turn all the way from living this way over to living this way, that turning is repenting. So John walked down into the water. He made sure that he was talking to people when he was by water. So either a river or a lake that was deep enough that he could walk in and the water kind of got up to about here or so. And then he said, you have repented. Come on down here and be with me. So the person would come down there and John would say, okay, now stand right here. And then John would hold on to him and he would dip him down all the way until the person was way under the water. And then he'd pull him back up. And that is called baptism. John baptized people down into the water and up again. The people repented from their ways to God's way. John told them, come down here. He baptized them. So people started calling him John the Baptist. And that's how we hear about him in the Bible, as John the Baptist. He did this every day. And while he was doing that, he was crying out in a loud voice. Wait a minute, that sounds familiar. He was crying out in a loud voice, prepare the way of the Lord. Do you remember that from Isaiah? That was the clue to the mystery. The clue was explaining about John the Baptist. That's fun. Part of the mystery has been revealed here. Well, more and more people came, and some of the people just loved hearing him talking so much that they stayed like all day. I think some of the people even stayed overnight so they wouldn't miss anything that John said. And those people were called John's disciples. A disciple is someone who listens to another person, because they want to hear the truth of that person. So John had a group of disciples. Well, a few months after this started happening, Jesus and his disciples came out to a different part out in the countryside, the wilderness kind of area. And they were out there, and Jesus was teaching, and they were baptizing people that came to them. And John the Baptist was with his group not too far away. Well, his disciples heard about that, Jesus, and they went over to check it out, see what he was doing. And they were like, hey, look at that. Do you see what he's doing? Let's go tell John. So they came back and they said, I think we might have a problem. Do you remember that man, Jesus, that, remember he came to you and you baptized him? John said, yes. They said, well, now he is out and he's teaching and he's baptizing people and lots of people are coming to him. And John said, great. And they said, well, I don't know what's so great about it. I think the people like Jesus more than they like you. John said, that's just the way it's supposed to be. And then the disciples probably went, very interesting, because they didn't understand. So John explained to them by talking about a wedding. And he said, this is what it's like with Jesus and with me. You know, when there's a wedding, the groom stands up in the front, and all the people are there watching him. And the groom is waiting for the bride to come to him. The groom doesn't stand there by himself. He stands with his best friend. And his best friend is watching with the groom for the bride to come. And the best man likes to be there a lot. But the best man knows that the day is not about him, it's about the groom. That's the way it is with Jesus and me. You see, I must become less. Jesus must become greater. Oh. Well, we heard, let me write down here. I wrote down here all the things that we heard so I'd remember because it's very interesting. Oh, I forgot to tell you this. John told his disciples, God the Father sent his Son down, Jesus, to be here to talk to the people so that Jesus could tell all the people things about himself. And God the Father has given Jesus all power over everything. And whoever listens to Jesus and believes him has eternal life. So John the Baptist had told the people to get ready for Jesus. Now that Jesus was there, John's job was finished. It was complete. And so John gladly stepped aside, joyfully stepped aside, so that Jesus could tell people things about himself. Like the verse, remember that verse? We did it last week. It's in John 14, chapter 6. No, John 14, verse 6. And it says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus could say verses like that to people so they could learn about him. So God gave us clues in Isaiah about a voice crying in the wilderness. And God sent John the Baptist to the wilderness to be a clue to tell people about Jesus so they could come and see and hear that. And because John helped the people to get ready for Jesus to come, John was very important in God's eyes. That was the clue that Zacharias got from the angel. So all those clues led up to John the Baptist coming, telling about Jesus. Oh, the Bible has such good mysteries. The Bible has such good clues. The Bible has such good news.